And at this time, I would ask for a roll call and certification of quorum.
Thank you. Charles City County, Mr. Coda. Ms. Johnson. Ms. Russell. Chesterfield County, Mr. Carroll.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Davey.
Here.
Ms. Fry.
Here.
Mrs. Haley. Mr. Holland.
Here.
Mr. Engel.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Winslow. We'll come back to him. I think he's here, but not here. Henrico County, Mr. Baca.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Mr. Brandon. Mr. Mackey. Reverend Nelson. Mrs. O'Bannon.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Thornton. Town of Ashland, Ms. Abbott. Mr. McGraw.
Here.
City of Richmond, Mr. Addison. Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Giovia.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Miss Lambert. Miss Lynch. Dr. Newbill.
Here.
Mr. Poole. Ms. Robertson. New Kent County, Mr. Lockwood.
Here.
Mr. Moyer. Ms. Page.
Present.
Thank you. Goochland County, Ms. Lascolette. Mr. Spoonhauer.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Davis.
Here.
Good morning, thank you. Ms.
Morning.
Laurenzon. Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Ms. Pritchard, thank you. And Mr. Whitaker.
Here.
Good morning, thank you. Powhatan County, Mr. Byerly.
Good morning. Here.
Good morning, thank you. Mr. Hall.
And good morning. I'm here.
Good morning, thank you. Circling back, Chesterfield County, is Mr. Winslow here? Or Henrico County, Reverend Nelson? I'm calling their names because they were both present in an executive committee. So I would expect they'll join us, but we'll note that if they're able to pop on.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Here. And
We do have a quorum.
We do have
Yes.
a quorum. Great. Thank you, everyone, for your participation this morning. Now we will move into our public comments. Do we have any comments that have been shared for us in advance of the meeting, or anyone online wishing to comment?
We did not receive any comments prior to the meeting, and so I do not have any introductions for comments this morning.
Okay, great. We'll move right along to our consent agenda, folks. As you can see, we have 3 items for our discussion. If there's no objections to these orders, I'd love to take them as a slate. If anyone would like to, I'll take a time. If anybody would like to remove an item to discuss and vote on separately, I would happy to entertain a motion to that effect.
Mr. Chairman, hearing no one wanting to remove, I move to approve the consent agenda as a slate.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second,
second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Page. And I will open it up for discussion of the items. We have the approval of the agenda, the meeting minutes, which have been included in your packet for your review, and then the Rural Transportation Work Program. I will take a moment to kind of just, the last item is a little unique in that it is an authorization for staff to submit for the fiscal year 2022 Rural Work Program to VDOT, which is an application for state funding to do research, which you can see on your screen. As many of you know, there's work going on to look at expanding the boundaries of the RRTPO, and one of the ramifications of that is that we would no longer be eligible for this grant, but since, and this is applicable to the counties of Charles City, Goochland, New Kent, and Powhatan, but since we are still in the process, staff has determined that we are still eligible to apply to receive these funds from VDOT. Staff has worked on a proposal that would allocate the whole of the award to supporting staff to provide technical assistance to the jurisdictions for these grants opportunities. And if approved, obviously, as in past years, our staff would work with our county staffs in those 4 jurisdictions. Mr. Parsons will serve as lead in the effort to ensure coordination are underway in the urbanized portions of the region. And so that being said, that's what we'll be voting on approving. Is there any discussion regarding that item? Hearing none, we do have a motion and a second on the table. We could do this by consensus vote. So all those in favor of approving these 3 consent agenda items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for staff for researching that item 3 as things are fluid to ensure that we're able to maximize the funds that are available to us, especially for these localities. All right, so moving into standing committee and other reports, I will give you my report. I'll probably, first off, thanks everyone. I know this has been a unique time. Like I said, welcome back. I know we have all been super busy, and as I've said in just about every meeting, one of my hopes or goals as chairing this year has been to work together and get to know folks more. Obviously, that's been a little bit difficult in COVID, but some of the work we've done has really facilitated that. And I have been overwhelmingly proud of our jurisdictions and how folks have banded together. I look at what our partners in the Chickahominy Health District have been able to do to promote the vaccines and promote and administer the vaccines. Just this week, I was meeting with some of our staff, and they were talking about how they're partnering with Hanover to help in some of their areas and some of the call centers in Henrico. So, in unprecedented times like this, the local cooperation is just overwhelming, and our organization specifically should be very proud because we are the hub. We are the organization that people can turn to when something needs to get done across multiple jurisdictions, and I'm very proud of that, and we should all be proud of the work that we're doing to enable that. And it just has gone on to solidify the importance of PlanRVA and what we're able to do. So just kind of wanted to say that. As we all know, for the last, I guess, since October timeframe, we've been working on the charter agreement revisions. In the executive committee, we did get an update from Ms. Heater regarding that. And we've talked about all the issues. There was some concern raised regarding the dues. Most of those have been addressed. Version 9 of the charter amendments are expected to be approved by all 9 localities by May 12th, which is yesterday. So I know the latest update, Hanover, Mr. Peterson did communicate in the executive committee meeting that Hanover has passed them last night. So we will be looking to implement these in our next meeting. Once all the localities have approved them, they're in effect, and then we will be talking about the bylaws. In the executive committee, Mr. Gregory gave us a review of the draft bylaws that'll be heading out to our jurisdictions. PlanRVA staff is requesting that any feedback be submitted no later than the 21st. So a pretty quick turnaround. Our goal is to try to have this in place for June, which will also coincide with our election of officers for the new slate. It's so that can be in effect by our July meeting, and this new board the new officers can start with a fresh slate. It is, on one hand, it seems like this year has flown by. In other aspects, it's like, wow, I can't believe we've done all this stuff in the last 11 months, but we are getting ready. So I'm getting ready to pass the gavel to someone, and by our bylaws, our new officers are elected by June 8th. So I have asked Reverend Nelson and Dr. Newbill to, as past chairs, to head the nominating committee. They will be working with staff to put the nominations together for our vote next month to fill the positions of chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. Any questions regarding the nominating committee, the charter agreement?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please, Mr. Bannon.
Sorry. We have a rotation that we follow. I mean, we are going to continue to follow the rotation, I assume, for the chairman, vice chairman, et cetera.
Yes, that is the plan, Mr. Bannon. As you know, the rotation sometimes gets a little out of whack based on where folks are. So I think Guchin was slated. There's some decision. Guchin was slated to be secretary. I was slated to be secretary, and I just skipped the line and just took over the gavel. So there will be some discussion around how to handle all of that. Again, Mr. Peterson had stepped in from a Hanover perspective to fill in for Mr. Davis, whose work obligations did not allow him to be treasurer. So, but you are correct. The goal is to follow the rotation as much as we can.
Thank you.
But of course, nothing's ever as easy as we hope it is. It's going to be. So such is the world we live in.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Eric Gregory. Before we move on to the next item, I would like to just touch on the charter. I know that's been it's a long dead horse now that we keep beating, but just to,
it is not dead. It is so alive. It's more alive than it's ever been, Eric. How can you say that?
It's still kicking. Man. It's still kicking. That's for sure.
But it's coming around the final turn for the home stretch, man.
And I don't want to upset the apple cart to mix my metaphors, but I would like to touch on just a couple of things, and also the bylaws, which are melded together with the charter and will be needed to be amended along with that to be compliant. So
yes, thank you.
As Mr. Spoon had, if just to take a quick moment, as Mr. Spoonhour mentioned, we are in the home stretch of the charter agreement revision approval. 6 of the 9 member jurisdictions have approved the charter to date. We're looking for the final 3 to approve that in the coming weeks. And once the final jurisdiction approves the charter revisions, they will become effective. And we'll be good to go on that. So look for an update on that in your email when that occurs. We could entertain a sort of a ceremonial approval by the commission itself, but that's not legally necessary for the charter revisions, or the new charter, if you will, to become effective. So your local chief administrative officers, your CAOs, your county managers, or your county administrators or city managers have been greatly helpful, and also the local legal counsel and your various local legal offices have been extraordinarily helpful and cooperative in this process, and I want to thank them and express our appreciation to that. So the bylaws will need to be approved, and we need to run through those real quick so they're officially presented at this meeting, because the plan will be under the bylaws, there needs to be 30 days between the meetings at which they're presented and at which a vote is taken to approve them. So I'm going to, you have a copy of the bylaws in your packet, but I am going to attempt to share my screen. Let's see.
And Eric, just so you know, when we do the ceremony, I do have the Goochland Marching Band on standby for that ceremonial. If any other localities would like to participate with, some of their band, it could be a great regional thing. So.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay, please confirm that everybody's seeing the screen now. Yes, okay, super. All right, I am going to run through the bylaws revisions that we're presenting today, and then you'll be voting on those at your July meeting. So they're a little different than what you had in your packet, but only minor sort of housekeeping changes. But they nevertheless need to be reviewed today. So right there in the middle of the page, they're in track changes, so it will be easy to see the updates. Article 2, paragraph 2 there, the commission also is known as PlanRVA, just to make it clear the sort of public face or public identity of the agency is recognized in the minutes. Paragraph 7 there at the bottom of the page, that's just a housekeeping change as amended thereafter, because they could, as we know, the charter can be changed. If you follow on there to page 2, Article 6 regarding the officers. This change is just to reflect or to achieve compliance with the new charter revisions, and to recognize the sort of the new way that the votes will be expressed or be cast by the representative members from each jurisdiction. So this is just to achieve compliance with the new charter. No, section 4, that's just a housekeeping change to correct that word provided there. And again, section 5 is just to achieve consistency with the charter amendments. These were some housekeeping changes to the treasurer and to address how the finances were handled, and just clean up that section. So disbursements are replaces the word checks, just because the payments that the agency makes these days obviously are not all by check. Many of them are by wire transfer or other sort of electronic payment processes. And there's some more housekeeping changes here on page 5. And again here, this section 3 on page 7. That is Article 8, section 3 is again to make that section consistent with the charter amendments and concerns a quorum. Commission members representing a majority of voting seats shall constitute a quorum. That way, you don't need to have all of the representative members there, or not all, but a majority of the representative members there to constitute a quorum. You just have to have a majority of the voting seats represented, which is one of the goals that the locality members wanted to achieve through the charter revisions, and the bylaws just need to reflect that. And again, if you follow on to following page 8, it addresses the amendment of the bylaws process, which requires the 30 days between presentation and the final vote on the bylaws. So that's what we're doing today. We're doing the first step in that process, and that and this Article 13 just recognizes that the bylaw amendments become effective upon adoption. So that is all I have. I just wanted to run through those today so we could meet that requirement. Please be prepared to vote on these bylaw amendments in July. You will be receiving a copy of this, obviously, beyond what's in your packet yet today. If you have any questions, or if anyone from your staff have any questions, I'm happy to answer them and work with them to resolve any questions they may have. So please let me know if you have any. I'm happy to answer what I can today, or we can move along. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, hello?
Yes, Mr. Bannon.
Okay. Do we need to vote to accept them for just, after discussing, in other words, to show that we saw them? Do we need to take actually a motion or action just to say we have accepted them for review?
Mr. Gregory?
That is not necessary, although certainly I could, it wouldn't hurt to have a motion on the record acknowledging compliance with Article 9 of the bylaws, requiring their presentation at this meeting today.
Okay, so if anyone, I will entertain a motion, or we can.
Well, I would like to make a motion that we, according to the processes we have established, that we are
Morning, this is Jim.
we are accepting these bylaws in order to review and discuss with others, so that we can take a vote at the June meeting. I think July meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, and that was,
I'm sorry, Mr. Baca and Rico.
thank you, Mr. Baca.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to distribute the bylaws as presented, and a second. Any conversation? Hopefully we do this by acclamation vote, Mr. Gregory.
Yes, that will suffice.
Thank you. So we will do this by acclamation vote. All in favor of the approval of passing the bylaws for review, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Bannon. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Gregory.
Thank you.
All right, and at this time, we will move to the Audit Facilities and Finance Committee. Mr. Holland.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. I trust you all.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to share that the Finance Committee met on April 20th and reviewed the March financials as well as some February, and included in the packet of your April full committee meeting cancellations. Overall, the financials demonstrate an improvement in the year-to-date financial position. I'm pleased to say so today. And of course, staff has been working with the transition to support our financials with VML and VACO, with financial assistance from Chesterfield and Henrico County Finance Departments. So we appreciate their help and support. The Finance Committee also reviewed an extension of the existing audit services engagement with Dunham, Marquardt, and Rhodes, and authorized an extension of the agreement for an additional year for the fiscal year 2022. And staff is working on the release of an RFP to do so. In addition, the committee also convened in closed session to address matters related to our office leasing. And so with that thought, I will ask Ms. Heater, first of all, to share
Good.
some details of the financials. And again,
And be down. Hi, I'm Andreas. Oh, hey. And how are you?
Hey, well, thank you.
Ms. Heater, I'm going to pass off the baton to you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Appreciate your introduction. I am showing on the screen this morning the financial statements prepared for the period through March 31. As Mr. Holland indicated, the February statements are also included, but those figures are shown here in the February column of the March statements as well. So March statements include the entire year to date. On the screen, you have the profit and loss statement. So this indicates by month the revenue sources that have been received over the fiscal year period, starting with the federal funding, then moving to state and local funding, and then finally at the bottom, the small amount of private dollars that we receive. So our total income for the year to date is over in the far right column at $2,251,000. Then the next section is our expense section. Expenses categorized by salary and wages, our benefits section, professional services, office operations expenses, computer operations, our pass-through, and our leasing infrastructure expenses. Total expenses for the year to date are at $2,185,000. So that does leave a net operating surplus of $66,241. We have incurred capital expenses over these months, more so in the earlier part of the fiscal year, but those capital expenses at $13,247 leave the remaining net income after capital expenditures at $52,994. So as Mr. Holland indicated, our financial position has improved over where we were, say, in December at a year-to-date deficit. Largely that's because we've been able to achieve catching up on much of our revenue that we had earned in the first part of the year, but needed to be collected. And so we've gotten our invoicing up to date and having our accounts receivable reconciled with the accrued revenues has been a big step in that process. So I'll echo his remarks about many thanks to Dan Van Dornick, our new fractional CFO, Director of Finance from VML Vaco, as well as the assistants from the Chesterfield and Henrico Finance Department teams. The balance sheet is here as well. As of March 31, I'll skip to the bottom. The Finance Committee did review this in detail, but we'll again echo that we are in good shape, and we are at the point where we are projecting to be able to maintain the excess of the $1 million fund balance objective for the organization that we achieved last year. So I would be very happy to attempt to answer any questions you have about the financials, or certainly can forward those to the Finance Committee and or Mr. Van Dornick to follow up with any member who would like additional information.
Thank you, Ms. Heater. Thank you, Mr. Holland. Any questions for either Mr. Holland or Ms. Heater regarding the financials?
If there are no questions, I think the committee did take action in April to recommend acceptance of the February and March financial statements. That does not require a second. So when the board is ready, we can move forward with a vote by acclamation on that item.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the February, March financials for acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. Any debate or conversation, questions? All those in favor of accepting the financials as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Great job, team. Great job to the Finance Committee and to Ms. Heater. And I know we've done a lot of work, not just to improve our financial position, but to have full confidence in the numbers that we're seeing, so that it is not lost on me specifically how hard you all have worked to do that. And it is incredibly appreciated, not just by myself, but I think I speak for the rest of the committee, but also for our citizens that make this happen. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. moving right along, I'm excited to hear from Mr. Davey on Public Outreach and Engagement Committee.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you perfectly, sir.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Our tiny committee of Mr. Thornton and myself have been helping Martha and staff with a lot of the work that they've been doing. And you're going to hear a pretty full report that Martha helped me prepare. And I'll go at a very high level to sort of summarize that. And of course, she can sort of chime in with some of the very specifics. We went through an RFP process that has resulted in a stable of 6 on-call vendors that are now available to help us with the public engagement and outreach work that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Those resources are all now available to each of the jurisdictions, through Virginia procurement law, if that was something any one of our jurisdictional members would be interested in using. So obviously we can circulate the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of each of those different organizations. And Martha's team has really got them deployed now on 3 separate task orders already. AvidCore is the name of the company that staff has selected to move forward with the first, putting together our overall strategic plan for community outreach and engagement. Many of you participated in a survey that was part of that whole task order. And we actually had a committee report where we listened to sort of what is going to happen next with that overall strategic plan that AvidCore is sort of leading for PlanRVA. So all that's very, very positive. I was impressed with the work that they're doing, with their perspectives and how they can sort of help us achieve all of our goals. AvidCore was also selected for a second task order to start working with staff, updating the Title VI requirements and responsibilities, that we're responsible for. We got a brief update at our most recent meeting. And then West Cary Group was hired to do the third task order associated with the emergency management preparedness manual that's going out. So you can see how what Martha's staff has been doing is trying to align the strengths and the weaknesses with the individual task orders that she's asked to sort of carry out on behalf of the organization. And so far, my observation is things are going very, very well. And there's going to be more and more work and more need, for different commission members to be involved in this as things go forward, including a workshop that's going on May 25th, where we're going to try to prioritize a lot of the requirements, that we really see are necessary in the region going forward for our current programs. And from my perspective, to really raise awareness for this organization and all the great work that the organization does, which is probably more important now than ever before. You sort of build brand position and you build momentum, when you can, and you sort of step on the gas when you've got a lot of positive activity, which I think we do. And so we want to try to make sure that we sort of, keep that momentum going where we possibly can. So to that end, we've talked about possibly bringing on stakeholders, members, possibly onto the committee. They would be non-PlanRVA members, possibly that we're already interfacing with in the community, and we can bring them on as part of a committee. But if we choose to do that, we would also obviously want to make sure that we would have, many of our elected officials, as many as possible who would be interested in participating there to oversee the work of the committee. So it's another plea, and I'll probably be following up to remind everybody that we would love to have new members of the committee in place July 1st, when sort of the new year kicks off. So that's the high level. Obviously, Ms. Heater can fill in any details or questions, answer any questions that people have. But I'm very impressed with what staff is doing. I'm very impressed with the stable of consultants we have now that we can deploy. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
If Ms. Heater, before you jump, if I can add just a little bit to that. So as some of you may or may not know, in my daytime job, I run an advertising agency. And I go through the RFP process all the time. And I'm sure the RFP process, if you've ever had to go through it, either applying and or reviewing, it's super labor intensive. And I know this group went through had a huge response and did a lot of work choosing a great bench of folks. And I know this may be more applicable to the smaller localities, but I think all of us should be like very grateful. You know, if I look at Goochland, our communications, the director that we have in charge of that has no staff. They are also in charge of all of community relations, all of our broadband initiatives and grant writing for that, and is also our legislative liaison. So to be able to have a process by which we can find support and resources and know that they've already been extremely well vetted and can follow the process is going to be a game changer for Goochland County. And I have probably, you check me on this because all of our meetings were recorded. You can probably go back. I've probably talked about this in every meeting I've had. So this is, I know that it seems like, okay, well, it's a line item. This is huge and it can be great for all of our localities. So I'm just overwhelming. And again, you know, knowing what it's like going through the RFP process, you know, applying for some of these positions, it's great. I've spoken with 2 of the 3 owners of these, and they're just extremely excited to be part of this bench and very proud as well. So just wanted to give that little editorial before Ms. Heater made her comments.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chairman, I echo that, and I thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. David.
Well, thank you. I will, just as a follow-on to that, for kind of updates at the local level, we have heard, I think, from several jurisdictions, Goochland, Ashland, Chesterfield, Charles City, Hanover, that each of those jurisdictions, I think, will likely be purchasing from this bench. So, you know, whether or not they choose to utilize PlanRVA to help with that is you know, up to each locality. It's not a requirement. So that those executed agreements have been shared. All 6 executed agreements have been shared with each of the 9 jurisdictions, public information officers, designated individuals, as well as procurement staff and local legal. So everyone was included in that process to make sure that it passed mustard, if you will, for the local purchasing requirements. And we're really pleased with that. And we do actually achieve the city's procurement around supplier diversity as well. So we're just, again, very pleased with the outcome of this and hope that it can be a useful service to the jurisdictions. And I cannot reiterate enough, if any of the small localities in particular may feel a little overwhelmed about how to navigate that purchasing exercise, we're here to help, but it's not necessary. So any locality, any public body in Virginia actually can procure on these contracts, including some of the maybe regional boards. So we've shared this with Richmond Region Tourism, the RMTA, the Airport Authority, and many others, the Central Virginia Waste Management Alliance, to be able to let them know that they can have access to these services as well. I did just want to say too, I mean, it's really exciting to be able to move this effort forward. And I know Henrico County is doing probably a more robust effort than we are right now to be able to solicit input on how citizens want to give input. And so I'm anxious to talk with the department also about that. And Tim, I think that'll be another thing that maybe Mr. Thornton will be able to share once that data collection comes in from Henrico's survey work. Obviously, we're trying to learn along with the localities on how to best reach citizens and share information and get them involved in the planning process. So thank you very much for your support.
Great. Any questions for Ms. Heater or Mr. Davey? Okay, did you have one more? The West Cary group, you did mention that, Mr. Davey, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right. So while you're on deck, Ms. Heater, let's roll right along.
Okay, great. Well, in the spirit of that, if there's a theme for today, it's that we're really working to very intentionally improve and increase our communication about who we are and what we do. And it is not lost on me that it's very important to make sure that our commissioners are equipped with that information first and foremost. So Mr. Spoonhour and I have had numerous conversations over the last several months about how we can more effectively communicate to you about the myriad of projects that are underway with the commission, Mr. Davey and I have had that conversation through our strategic planning process and now in his chairman role with the committee. And so we're debuting for you this morning a new program dashboard. So many of you who have been around for a while might recall the days a few years ago where our staff report was sometimes north of 25 to 30 pages. While very thorough and incredibly detailed, I think it was at times perhaps a little overwhelming to try to get through. And so we've been working to try to find a way that we can give you kind of a high level but comprehensive view. And for our organization, I'll be honest, that's not an easy undertaking. So I've been able to put together this dashboard for you this morning, and I just wanted to kind of orient you. Essentially, month over month, there will only be a couple of sections that would change. And so in theory, the budget section would remain pretty steady unless we got a new grant opportunity in over the course of the 12-month fiscal cycle. But that next category here, if you can see it, the dollars expended, that of course would be updated and would align. Our intention is that we will begin to provide financial status reports that are also organized around these lines of businesses, which are each of our focus areas in our work program. And so then the dollars expended would correlate to our financial reports. Here you'll be able to see kind of the term. We do have a number of multi-year projects, and in other program areas, you'll see sometimes they don't always align with the fiscal year. And so we'd be able to see very quickly whether or not the pacing makes sense relative to the term of the project. We've also created a category where we connect to the key imperatives that you approved. And so as each year we identify and present to the board, ideally as part of our work program, the key imperatives for the organization. We'll make sure that we're aligning those and reporting that our work is connecting to those high level goals for the organization. We've provided a kind of a summary. If you had questions, you'd be able to very quickly identify who the lead staff member is for that. This is the person that's either running point on managing the project, leading the staff members, or supervising the contracts for that particular work. And then I've given you the estimation of the full-time personnel that are full-time equivalent personnel that are assigned to the project. So that gives you a really strong sense of how in the agency we're resourcing it. And in most cases, that correlates to the total budget figure. And I'll explain some of the variances there in a moment. And then finally, the next section that would be updated along with the dollars expended year to date would be those notable outcomes. So that's just sort of our quick tick list of things that we've kind of accomplished or milestones within that project area that have occurred over the reporting period. This report is a little bit more robust because it covers the entirety of the fiscal year to date, but we're really excited that hopefully this will be a useful tool for you to have kind of an at a glance and really pique your interest in some of the projects, and maybe it would stimulate a follow-up conversation with one of our staff members about what's going on in that area. So again, the top row is our line of business around administration. I've included really just the kind of contractual projects that we have going on. So that's why the numbers, are a little bit low, for example, in administration. Obviously, we have staff operating and overhead that's funded in this category, but to date, the consultant or external support contracts are totaling $12,000, and that's within budget. I haven't spent anything yet on the project that Mr. Davey described in the public outreach assessment. That's just because the first invoice hasn't come in, but that project has been contracted and is on target to be completed by the end of the fiscal year. In community development, we haven't done a ton, just about $2,000 worth of staff time in local technical assistance. And that's anything from helping to run down some grant opportunities, sitting in on local staff meetings, staff members this year virtually meeting with, communities to talk about different needs and issues. And so not a ton of activity, quite honestly, in this year in the notable outcomes category, but that is something that we try to reserve a small amount of money to be able to be on hand and a resource to our local jurisdictions. The analysis of impediments project did wrap up in March. And so we've got kind of the summary there for you. As of March 31, the billing hadn't quite caught up yet, but definitely by the April report, we'll be able to give you the final dollar summary on that. in the data, in the data research analysis, this is our program area where we really focus on providing the data and support and GIS, not just for the agency, but out into the community in our member jurisdictions. So we're on target there. Obviously, a lot of work going on with the census and thinking about how we can position our organization to not only interpret that data when it's available, but really stay on top of understanding how the demographics are changing in our community. With all the good news about the growth that Richmond has experienced over the last 9 months, I think it also, is important to be mindful of the impacts of that growth and how we sort of adjust to likely the changing expectations of these new residents to each of our communities. Emergency management, we've got a ton going on in that area, even without, really had to switch gears. Katie and the team with the Emergency Management Alliance really had to re-envision a lot of the activities with the grant funding, but they've done a great job of really thinking very creatively about how to move our projects through in mass care planning and our feeding simulation program, a regional recovery exercise that was hosted among your CAOs and elected officials earlier this spring. We've still been continuing to do the public outreach. Tim talked about the emergency preparedness guide a little bit, and we're continuing to collect the necessary materials, both now for virtual as well as in-person kind of tabletop exercises. So those grant funds all go kind of back to the region to support the 26 localities that participate in the Alliance and working together to think about emergency preparedness. Our environmental programs are also, exploding, quite honestly, this year. This fiscal year, there's more funding available in our environmental program than ever before. We've moved from having an annual $30,000 grant to, I think, just north of $250,000 this year. So it's really exciting. Sarah Stewart and team have done a really great job of growing that program and building a lot of great partners. And so that's been exciting. Of note, probably most of interest to our Chesterfield and New Kent friends, but we've been doing a lot with the newly designated tribal organizations and really trying to understand what our role is in coordinating and communicating. And that's been a really exciting and educational process, I will say. We are ever working on our compliance requirement to develop and implement a regional strategic plan. And so continue to be in conversations about the evolution of the Capital Region Collaborative, which has been the foundation for that regional strategic plan for the last 10 or so years, and how we continue to fulfill that requirement, particularly with all the work that has been happening at the local level and with other organizations around regional recovery and coming out of the pandemic stronger and in a different way. So kind of more to come on that, but we're excited about that most definitely. Finally, in the transportation program, again, it's been a busy time for Mr. Parsons, Chet, and his team. As you can see, we've kind of expanded, as everyone knows, and expanded our work to be focused on the launch of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority this year. And kudos to Chet and Nicole for all the work that they've been doing to bring that, kind of online and continuing to participate in the conversations with the leaders of that organization about what staffing needs to look like in the future. So I think there's going to be more to come on that. I think Mr. Winslow raised in the executive committee, certainly more discussions to have. The finance committee yesterday at their meeting did recommend approval of an extension of the support services agreement with PlanRVA. That'll go forward before the full authority at the end of this month on the 28th. And so assuming that is approved, we will continue to provide staff support this coming year, and included in the budget planning for next fiscal year, we are looking at some increases to our staff roles to be able to accommodate some of the new work that's coming in, not just with BTA, but in our environmental programs, to be able to support the new commitments that we're making around public outreach and engagement, and to be able to make sure that we're keeping pace with the demands of the work that we expect in the coming year. So I don't think I'll every month give this detailed report, but I just want to just kind of walk you through and orient you. And I mean, Mr. Spoonhour, if you have any thoughts, but otherwise I'd be happy to answer questions if anyone has one.
Yeah, I'll do a little bit more editorializing. So when I took over as chair, I had only been in government for 5 months, and then doing this with not really a good understanding, quite honestly, of everything that PlanRVA did. And each month it seemed like I was learning more and more, and I felt like, and Martha and I discussed, well, gosh, wouldn't it be great to be able to show everything in sort of one area so people can see the amount of work that's going on. And I love how she and her team have come up with metrics to kind of give that high level of visibility. And if you take this and you overlay it with the work that we presented a couple months ago with our key imperatives, I think it's going to give us a much better understanding, not just of the work that they're doing, so that we can feel good about the direction and how it's being managed. But I see this as a real tool to go back to my locality, to the different areas that are looking at things, to be able to share, here's what PlanRVA is doing, and here's some resources which will help. And obviously, we are an organization that is based on on driving revenues by supporting our local jurisdictions. So I really hope that we can appreciate the power in this and being able to open some eyes into all the great work that's going on. And the way we've talked about it, Martha, is that yes, we wouldn't go through this every month, but maybe someone comes from one of the lead staff, comes and presents something because they've got some great things going on in their line of business. I know the first few months, it felt like most of our meetings together were nothing but outside groups coming and giving presentations, which I know we're going to switch to sort of how we solved for that due to the pandemic. But I'm really hopeful this starts to give the broader picture of, I mean, there's 2 pages of a lot of great work that's going on that at a glance, you can kind of see how it's working. And then as well, it's a great tool for the team to realize, okay, where are we with our budgets to our expenditures? And so I think this is really, really well thought out. And I know Martha's open to feedback and looking to make it even more beneficial and a better tool for all of us. Any questions or comments for Ms. Heater?
Mr. Chairman, Canova Peterson. I'm looking at this. I think it's a great job on this dashboard. One suggestion, and this may just be me, my brain will not hold with so many things. When I look at the key imperative column, I think it would be helpful if those key imperatives were noted as part of this dashboard rather than just 1 through 5, because I can't tell you which one is which.
That's a great suggestion. I will add that. Thank you.
And then just to, I will live my mantra of iterate to great. So I think this is probably our 4th or 5th iteration. I think one thing, I'm not sure if folks would agree, is it's hard to kind of from my eyes to sort of see which of these sections go to which line of business. So somehow boxing, okay, is the administration line of business, does that include general admin and operating and special administrative boxes? So sort of grouping them together might be helpful, even if you have to go more than 2 pages.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Eder, for doing so, because this reminds me of the balanced scorecard, which has 4 quadrants: financial, employee engagement, and those other areas. So I think this is a significant step forward in terms of putting it together in one place as a dashboard. So thank you for your efforts in this regard.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Holland. All right, Ms. Heater, I hear we're better together. So let's talk about being better together.
Well, yeah, thanks. So we did launch our Better Together webinar series earlier in 2020. So, we're continuing with that. May 20th is our next installment. Each of you should have a calendar invite for 2 o'clock next week in your calendar. If it's somehow been misplaced, feel free to let me know and we'll redistribute it. But I'm really excited. We're going to have a panel focusing on water quality across the region. So this is kind of a new topic that we're taking on. We haven't discussed environmental issues in the series yet. Sarah Stewart from our team will be facilitating that panel, and it'll feature kind of some high-level project overviews of some things happening in Richmond and Henrico around water quality. And Sarah's going to round it out by talking about, I think, a handful of things. There are exciting water quality initiatives happening in each of the 9 jurisdictions, quite frankly. So we're excited about that. Please plan to tune in. If you've got folks that you think would benefit from participating, we're happy to send an invitation out to them to participate as a webinar attendee, or we can share the YouTube link. It does stream live on YouTube, and it's there for people to watch after as well. The last 2 sessions have been kind of benchmarks for us. So Sarah has, I think, big shoes to fill. Last month with the Fall Line Trail as the topic, that was our largest attendance so far. It was really exciting to see how many people tuned in the webinar as well as on the live stream. So we're really excited that we've been able to, in such a short amount of time, achieve such great momentum. The session before that was at that time with Richmond Region Tourism, talking about the tourism master plan that had been the record breaker, and then Fall Line Trail broke that record. And so we're telling Sarah that we need to make sure we break that record again this month. So your help in that is really appreciative. And we've got several of you who are regulars and mainstays on that, and we just really appreciate the questions and the comments and the good feedback. And certainly if you have suggestions about partnerships from your community that we should be featuring, we've been trying to make sure that it's somehow connected to PlanRVA, but we definitely want to make sure that we are using this as a platform as part of our strategic planning process to really promote the fact that there is a ton of regional collaboration happening in the region. It's not all happening through PlanRVA, certainly, but the jurisdictions do work together on a daily basis. And I think one of the things that I've learned in my 5.5 years here in the region is that message is not told enough. And so we are trying to use this as a platform to really be able to share that good news and let people know that there's a lot happening, and it's happening because there are people in your localities that are working across boundaries every day. So thanks for any suggestions you might have on that front too, as far as topics.
That's great. It'd be interesting to look back at, so some of these conversations were happening in this meeting. And again, we moved out of necessity, but as with a lot of things, we found some really great benefits to sort of see sort of the participation prior, when it was just in this meeting, to how much benefit now the region's getting, I think is super exciting. Great. Thank you, Ms. Heater, for your excellent update. And at this point, if there's any new business to come before the board, hearing none, love to go into our commissioner comments. So this is the time for you to brag on what you're doing, or throw out the white flag and say, hey, could use some help on this. So I will open the floor up to my peers to let us know what's going on in your jurisdictions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. O'Bannon, thank you for leading us off.
In Richmond Magazine this month is a very nice article about Henrico County and how we have initiated some projects that are very successful. So if you have a minute, you could check with Richmond Magazine. I think it's under, I don't think it's richmond.com, but it's Richmond Magazine. So just
okay, great. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
Oh, by the way, it says we're making a moonshot.
Wow, okay. Now that got my attention.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Holland.
Yes, Mr. Holland.
I would like to share that we have such an outstanding board and staff and employees in Chesterfield County. We were, and it's really a credit to our staff, did an outstanding job of providing each person a box of Girl Scout cookies and an appreciation note for their outstanding service and work for our citizens in Chesterfield. Even I received one, and they were very good. Those Girl Scout cookies were really delicious last evening when I arrived home. So I was just overjoyed and really, really quite pleased with the opportunity to show appreciation to the outstanding people who served so well in Chesterfield County. So kudos to Chesterfield. And I certainly would say that whenever we have an opportunity to show appreciation and to say the word thank you, we should always take the opportunity. So thank you for this opportunity to say so. And I want to thank particularly the Finance Committee and Ms. Heater for the outstanding work they have done. It has been a tremendous job, and it's due to their credit that we are where we are, and we're doing better and continue to do well. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well, for your leadership this year. You've done a tremendous job. You are doing a tremendous job. No past tense there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for that, Mr. Holland. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Efficient. Yes, Ms. Page.
Good morning to all. I would just like to say that in New Kent County, we are very excited about reopening on July 4th. There will be fireworks at Colonial Downs, and we have not had that in over 10 years. So we are excited about that and invite all of you down to Colonial Downs for fireworks. The other exciting part about Colonial Downs and Rosie's is that we will return to live horse racing this year. And one of our spectacular events will be the New Kent Derby. And so, of course, they have guidelines, and they have, as they have since the beginning of the pandemic, put in all the pre-safety precautions that are needed. So we're excited about that. Last week, we had the opportunity to view a magazine out of Florida, Business View, Civic and Peninsula, focus on economic development in global communities. New Kent County was featured in that magazine. And so we just had wonderful, positive, and great things going on. We do, sir, would like to express our appreciation as your role as chair of PlanRVA this year. We thank you for being a champion during these unprecedented times. And thank you for your commitment and dedication along with our staff. And so to all, we'll say thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
You can say goodbye to me next month. I'm still going to be hounding you for stuff this month. So, Mr. Carroll.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. I will say that this is National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Week. John F. Kennedy declared May the 15th as National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Day back in 1962. In Chesterfield County, we held our wreath memorial ceremony on the 11th, recognizing the 5 Chesterfield County police officers that have died in the line of duty and 2 sheriff's deputies that have died in the line of duty, as well as several state police officers that have died in the line of duty historically in Chesterfield. And that was an event that we attended the other day. I just wanted to bring that forward. Thank you.
That's excellent, Mr. Carroll. Thank you so much. Okay, anybody else? All right. Well, sort of self-servingly, it will be in, I think it's 12 days this time, 30 years ago, I came back from Desert Storm, and it is hard to believe it's been 30 years ago, if you can imagine that. But just from, and I got to go up to DC last weekend to march in the virtual Memorial Day parade, which I've marched in about 25 years. So it comes back pretty quick though, after 6 years of doing it. But, you know, I've got to have a lot of conversations about Desert Storm. And, you know, one of the things that I think our country can be most proud of is how it had responded to Desert Storm veterans as opposed to what our soldiers and sailors and men and women came back from Vietnam. I think the country really corrected itself, and I know I appreciate it. Now I got back. It was first in, first out, so I was one of the last ones out. So I missed all the parades and everything. But I do appreciate that our country can pivot to rally around great things and do what's right. And I'm hopeful that we can continue with that tradition. So I can't believe it's been 30 years. Can't be that old. So, all right, folks. Thank you so much for a great meeting. I look forward to seeing everybody again next month. And at this, I will call us adjourned.
Thank you for your service.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for your service, sir.